announcements as well. For those of you who are curious, it did rain on me this morning. I was glad to have it. It was raining at my house when I left, so I was happy to have the rain. I went outside and turned off my sprinklers, which usually run on Thursday mornings, so glad to have the rain. And I understand it got rain out here, so at least in some places. The righteous got some rain out here, I understand. If you didn't, then you can fill in those blanks. All right, so we are working on some lists. And I'm going to review kind of where we have been. And then I'll share my last two action words with you. And then next week, we'll get you involved in this. And we'll just see where we end up. But let me start with just a review of the list we've been working on. You'll remember we started off with two lists. One was from just a reporter, newspaper kind of a guy who began to ask people about if you could give someone a word to live by, what would it be? And started compiling those words and came up with a list of 7. Wrote an article. A pastor down in Alabama saw that article, got his own idea, started asking believers, Christians, if you could give somebody a word to live by, what would it be? Started coming up with a variety of words, compiled his own list, and there were 2 lists of 7. These 3 words were on both lists: love, learn, and give. Now, these other words were individual words on both those first 2 lists. Live, think, laugh, try, believe, forgive, work, hope. And then I have come up with my own list, and you will remember that the words that I and you will come up with next week were words that were not on those first lists. That's kind of the little caveat there. So the first 5 words that I have given you that I think are words to live by would be trust, pray, serve, thank, and hear, as in hear the word of the Lord. And we went on through all of that last week. So tonight, I will complete my list. I have 2 words for you for tonight. And then next week is audience participation. So here are the requirements. If you choose to participate, come with your word. It cannot be one of the 21 words we've already shared. So be creative. Come up with your own word, and we'll ask you about that word and then give you a moment or two. And I'll cut you off if I think you're going too long. It's my last night. So I'll just cut you off. But we'll give you a chance to kind of reflect on briefly why that word you think is a good word to live by. So that's kind of where we're going to go next Wednesday. I'll review again. We'll go through that and we'll have a good time with all that. So here's my first word for tonight. I don't know if you're keeping track of all this, but first word for tonight, word number 6 on my list would be the word obey. So I'm going to use the word obey, and there are so many Bible verses that kind of speak to that, but I'm just going to start with this one. It's in John chapter 14. And this is just says Jesus answers a question from Judas. So that might give some additional insight, but this is an answer that Jesus is giving to a question that was asked by Judas. And Jesus answered, "If anyone loves me, he will keep my word." Some of your translations may say, "He who loves me will obey my commands." So the word obey, I think, is a good word to live by, and I would say 2 things to you about that. Obedience has always been God's expectation of His people, and obedience would always be, the idea of obeying would always be one of our greatest challenges. So at the same time that it is God's expectation of us, it's always been a big challenge for His people. I think we can probably start back in the Garden of Eden. There are these instructions: do not eat of this fruit from this tree. And as is so often the case when we have clear instructions, temptation is presented directly, but it also comes along with deception and enticement. And in all of those situations, the idea of obeying becomes a challenge for us. Clear directive, but then that directive is met head on by temptation, deception, enticement, all of those things. But obey is a word that I think we should live by. Maybe the story in Genesis 22 of Abraham and Isaac probably speak to this as much as anybody else. Now, you and I grew up, many of us who grew up in church anyway, we grew up hearing that story, knowing that story, reading that story. I don't know that we've ever really fully grasped the drama in that story. Abraham, in his old age, blessed with a son for whom he had prayed about, not years, but decades, and then is told, sacrifice this son. The drama there is significant. The obedience there is remarkable. So obedience is a word for God's people to live by. The 10 Commandments, you probably have heard the little phrase, those are not 10 suggestions. 10 commandments. Commandments require obedience. And so the word I would start with here tonight is the word obey. I think I've mentioned here a couple of times. One of those favorite old hymns that we sing, trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. I love the way those 2 words go together, and I love the fact that the hymn writer thought happiness was connected not only to trusting but obeying. And I think maybe there's a lot to that. Bill mentioned dog trainer he met today. Now, Kathleen and I have a little dog. His name is Griffin. Not sure how old he is. I know he's at least 14 years old because we've had him for 14 years. Not sure how old he was when we got him. 1, 2, 3, I don't know. And he hasn't told us. Now, he's probably the worst trained dog of dogs. We are two of the best trained dog owners. He has trained us well. Last night, Kathleen's off with some of her friends at a dinner party, and I follow the normal routine. And at 7:30, after I've had my shower, he demands that we go for another walk. And so what do? I change clothes and we go for another walk. I was obedient to the command of my 7-pound dog. So you may have heard this before, but obedience sometimes has like 3 categories, maybe more, but I've read it and heard it that obedience could be qualified into 3 categories, kind of a standard obedience. This is the expectation, but then there's the sudden, some have called it spontaneous obedience. Maybe you've sensed that before in your life when you just sense God telling you to do something, telling you to say something, telling you to go somewhere. I think that's some of what we hear in the testimony time, that I sensed God telling me to do this, and I felt obedience. I felt a sense of I needed to obey those commands. Spontaneous. And then there's the sacrificial obedience that is kind of out there for God's people. But when we talk about obedience, it's not just this idea of being obedient to what God's leading us to do, what God's calling us to do, God's commands in Scripture. God's people are expected to be rule followers. We're expected to be law-abiding citizens. We're expected to respect authority. All of those things kind of follow in line with this whole idea of obey. So the word that I add to my list, word number 6 for me, would be the word obey. Trust and obey. That's a good way to be happy in Jesus. Now, my last word, and I had a whole lot of words going around in my head, but the last word that I'm going to have on the list for us is the word bless. As in, be a blessing. But I'm going to go to Genesis chapter 12. If you've got a Bible, you can follow along, but I'm going to read Genesis 12 for us. Let me find it here. Genesis 12, I'm going to read verses 2 and 3. You've heard this before, but this is the call of Abraham. In Genesis 12, verses 2 and 3, God says to Abraham, I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse anyone who treats you with contempt, and all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. I would simply put the word bless on my list. The foundation of this idea of me and you being a blessing to others, the foundation for it all is the way God has blessed us. I'm blessed, you are blessed. Count your many blessings. We are blessed. But we are blessed for the purpose of being a blessing to others. Now, I know that it's pretty easy, and I know how we get there because I get there, that we sometimes equate this idea of blessing with giving. And giving is a part of blessing, but it's not where blessing starts and stops. Giving is only a part of being a blessing. Yesterday, Kathleen and I took a young couple out to eat lunch. I love them. They're great folks. I hired her when I was at the convention. She's brilliant. I've gotten to know her husband. He's a great guy. They have 3 daughters. The first one, the oldest, is missing an arm and a leg. The middle child probably will never speak. Fairly severely handicapped. The third daughter, perfectly well. But we took them out to eat yesterday to be a blessing. And in us attempting to be a blessing, we came away enormously blessed. They're just wonderful people. Last Sunday we had the educators all lined up across here, and the whole purpose of that was to try to bless them. The gift wasn't the blessing. 3 or 4 pencils wrapped up with a ribbon. Now, they were good pencils, but that wasn't the blessing. The blessing was you and me attempting to say, we love you and care about you and know that you are in the mission field and we want to be supportive of that. I hope they sensed that that was the blessing. Sometimes your presence is the blessing. I know a pastor. He's passed away now. He pastored the same church for 40 years. And I know him. After he retired and then passed away, I filled in at his church a little. I won't tell you the name of the church. But he was there for 40 years. And he was known for being present at so many events of the students and the kids in the school. His little claim to fame was he, regardless of what he had on, he wore red socks. In the town where he lived, the school, their colors are purple and white. It's not Mount Vernon. They built a brand new stadium, a brand new football stadium. And in that football stadium, every seat is purple except one, and it's red. Because this man blessed the people, the kids growing up in that community beyond measure. So I'm simply saying, bless others. Now, giving is a part of that. So give. But be a blessing to them. Your presence. Sometimes you just show up at a funeral. Sometimes you just show up at an event. Your presence sometimes is the blessing. Speak a blessing to somebody. A word of encouragement and help and hope and thanks. Just speak a blessing. And it can be just that. God bless you. Pray a blessing over people. That's what we try to do to the teachers and all the educators on Sunday, just to pray a blessing over them. So I'm simply going to add this to my list. Bless. As in, be a blessing to others. Look for ways to bless somebody else. I got a feeling if you and I are looking for ways and practicing blessing, some of those blessings are going to come back on you and on me, and we'll be grateful for it. So those are my words. Trust, pray, serve, thank, hear, obey, and bless. Action words that I think are good words to live by. Now, Bill has made a list of these lists. And you'll get those next week in the form of kind of a bookmark. And there's some blanks at the end, the bottom of that bookmark. And those will be where we add a few of your words, the ones I like. So be careful. You don't want the gong next Wednesday. I'll have all this newfound freedom next Wednesday. It'll be my last one. So come and just buckle in, because here we go next Wednesday. All right. That's it. Sunday, be here. The 31st, if you're in town, I know that's a holiday weekend, be here. And then between now and then, seek and find every opportunity you can to encourage somebody to be here on Pastor Joseph's first Sunday. All right, let's do that. And that first Sunday needs to be a great, great Sunday. It will be. Let's make sure it happens that way. All right. Love you. God bless you. You're dismissed.